Welcome back to Horrifically Well Read, Bled and Said. Today we are very excited to talk to Jacquie Walters, who is the author of one of my favorite books a couple years ago, which was Dearest, and a book that is coming out that is awesome as well called Turn Off the Light. So we are very excited to talk to you. Welcome, Jacquie.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the kind words.
Well, I was as soon, I had messaged you while I was reading this book, and you have the line of the year for me anyway, which is that the house was a mouth breather. And
Yeah.
I think that was one of those moments where I read a book and I was like, "You nailed exactly the feeling that you have in certain houses that are just a little loud, that just have these weird sounds," and I was like, "What a perfect way to put it," and I wanna start off with just how wonderful that line is because I think about it when I see you and your posts and your book all the time, so where did that come from?
Thank you. I think it's just what you said, which is this idea that, some houses feel alive. And I think in a haunted house novel, the house has to be obviously a character in and of itself. And I think it was a line that was added in later as I was kind of doing a voice pass on Claire, and she can be a little bit snarky. And I was just picturing this, floorboard popped up, and I was like, oh, it's kind of like mouth breathing. I don't know,
So cool.
like just
Well,
to
I
give the house some personality.
Yeah.
say it came from the fact that Jackie got an A in creative writing for personification of items.
Yeah.
Figuratively, yes, love that. So, I had to ask that first so I did not forget, but let's go back. If you would like, as every author just loves to do, what would be your short
Yeah.
synopsis for this book for anyone that's looking to pick it up?
Yes, I tell people I want to change the way you think about hauntings.
Yes.
It's one house, 2 women. They're both waking up with, mysterious injuries, seeing things out of the corners of their eyes, starting to question their own minds, and we will come to learn that they essentially need each other to survive, but they are living 400 years apart.
And, it's funny because Dearest and this new book both have where I'm like, when I try to describe it to someone, I'm have to be so careful about the way that I do to not give any of the,
I
like,
know.
secrets and the fun things that happen in this book because, like, I hear what you just said, and it brings up things and, like, I think there are so many moments towards the ends of this book where I was like, "That was so freaking inventive of things happening within the timelines." Obviously, as you said, there's 400 years, difference between it. And I was just, thinking like we always talk with authors about whether they outline, whether they plan, and that kind of stuff. And there are some complicated things involving the timelines that happen in this book. Were you keeping track of it? Did you already say, like, I want to do this or that? How did you like kind of go about that? Or did it just happen as you were writing?
So this is a great question because this book was hell to write, honestly. Like, it's my own fault because with Dearest, I had been planning that as a movie, and I'm a TV writer. I'm that's the world I'm in most of the time, and I had written like half of the movie, but I was just busy with TV stuff, and I kind of I was kind of on the back burner, and then the Writers Guild went on strike, and I wasn't allowed to work on any TV or movie stuff. And so I thought, well, maybe this is, my chance to write my debut novel. And I was like, wow, Dearest could be a cool book. So I wrote that book in 3 months, but that's because I'd been thinking about it so deeply for like two
Yeah.
years and had outlined it and written half of the movie, so it was like living and breathing inside me. So then going into book 2, now I'm on a deadline, which, I never had with Dearest really. And I was like, well, I can write a book in 3 months, so I'm good. And I was like busy with TV stuff and I kind of kept putting it off and then I finally dove in and I didn't know what I was writing. I This idea had not come to me and I wrote a completely different book, really. It was like a summer camp massacre story, which maybe at some point I'll bring back, but I wrote that and was like, man, this isn't working. I know it's not working. I can't figure out why. I sent it to my agent and he sort of kindly was like, yeah, this is like a page one rewrite. Like, what have you done here? So I changed the
Exactly what you
setting.
wanna
I
hear.
changed, yeah, exactly, exactly. So I changed everything about it. I kept some of the characters, but I wrote a whole new book. So now I've written 2 full novels. And I sent it to my editor, but the second version was kind of the story that we have now, but it was all present day. There was none
Okay.
in the past. And um I sent it to my editor and she was like, "This is great. Like let's get into the notes." And I was like, "Before you even start, I just feel like this book is nothing special. Like it's not trying to do anything interesting. It's maybe a compelling thriller or whatever, but it's not anything special." And I was like, "But I do have a solution, I think, and here's my idea. I want to, like, braid in this 1600s timeline," and of course, I was like, "Look, this is gonna take time because I'm essentially writing now a 3rd novel, and I need to research the 1600s," you know? And she's like, "Well, how much time would you, like, ideally have?" And I was like, "Honestly, let's just push publication a year, you know? Like, I can." And she was like, "Okay, a year." She's like, "Yeah, I can give you 2 months." I was like,
Come on,
so I was like, "All right, here we go."
thank
So I
you.
did so I did all of that in 2 months, which was nuts, but I had done so much leading up to that point, and this idea had been kind of living in me because I was sitting with my husband one night. It was just completely random, and I, like, heard a noise in the other room, and I was like, "What if hauntings are actually XYZ?" You know, not to give the
Yes.
spoiler.
Right.
And I was like, "Oh, maybe that's, that'll be my next book." And then I realized that I had sort of subconsciously written the perfect vehicle for that, and I was like, this is what this book is." It just took me 3 full novels to get to what it was,
That's all.
which, you know, 0 stars, do not recommend. Let's hope the next book doesn't go that way.
I love that. I think that, one thing that has been sort of popular in the sort of zeitgeist or whatever is multiple timeline books. And I love the fact that, like, this is one and it isn't at the same time. And again, not to go into
Mhm,
any kind of
mhm.
spoilers, but so often and a lot of these books are fantastic. I'm not trying to say anything otherwise, but a lot of times it will be like a 3 timeline book where it's basically 3 novellas. They kind of thematically have to do with each other, whether it's like the place or like
Mhm.
different things like that. I love the fact that neither of these stories could exist without the other one, right? And
Yes.
I thought that was just a real awesome twist. We'll get into the haunting part that I love too, but, like, just that idea of, like, this dual timeline story that is so interdependent on each other, and obviously, like, that came from you realizing, like, you wanted to add something to it, but, like, when was that, like, moment where you were like, like, these things are gonna happen? I love that.
Yeah, I think I had once I was going into it adding in the second perspective, it was a bit daunting because like you said, I wanted that feeling of like everything's intertwined. There's a lot that like if you just read it once, you might not even pick up on it, where if you go back and read it again, you pick up on things and I wanted to accomplish that, but it's hard to sit down and just like plan all of that before you start writing it. So I tasked myself with, okay, I'm going to plan like a few chapters at a time and kind of see where I end up and then take a break and plan then the next few chapters. And it also involved like of course getting to the end and then going back and being like, "Oh, there were a couple of things in the draft I sent my editor once I added in this perspective where I realized I had even more opportunity where, like, something strange would happen, in the past timeline, and it would kind of be unexplained as, we kinda get away with that in horror, like, it's just like but I realized, like, "Oh, no, I can actually have an explanation for everything that happens," and so that's when I kinda went back in and was, like, making sure that every sort of mysterious thing made sense, maybe not on the first reading, because that would be a very astute reader, but if you were to go back and sort of dot the i's and cross the t's, you would see, like, that's what that shadow is, or that's what etcetera.
That Well, now
It's
I'm gonna
like
have
a
to read it again,
yeah, a
so
person who's really paying attention. said, "I'm a astute reader."
Yeah, obviously was not that astute, but I will go back and,
Come on now.
No! I mean, maybe you were. Maybe you were. Maybe I shouldn't have said astute, but, like, a
no, I'm
No,
just
I
freakish
kidding.
think you're
reader
right,
who,
though.
like,
No,
remembers everything.
No, I think
no.
you're right, though, because to me, it's like, some people might call it Easter eggs or just
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
like how you used the word earlier, you braid in,
Mm.
and that's
Yeah.
awesome because it's just like, you gotta be paying attention.
Yeah, and there's certain movies like, and I think the first thing one that comes to mind is like The Sixth Sense, right? Where it has this really
Mhm.
surprise ending. And a lot of the fun that people had was going back and watching the movie and seeing kind of did it cheat, right? It's like if you watch this movie
Absolutely,
knowing
yeah.
the ending, does it still work? And that would definitely be something fun, and I'm sure like as you were editing and everything, that was one of the things that, would have been important, with this story too. So I would love to go back and read it again just for that because, I am generally, I read a lot of horror books and stuff like that, and I didn't see where this was going in the best possible ways. I
Yay!
would love to go back to see how you did that. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yes. I want to talk a
Wait,
little.
really quick.
Yeah.
You just, like, launched it out here, the TV writing. I'm involved in TV, like, I feel like, Adam, like, you're really familiar with Jackie, but
Yeah.
I don't know that
Sorry.
our listeners are, and I know we
Yeah.
have a habit of doing that together.
That is true.
So can you guys backtrack a minute and go into that? Because that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, so, your TV writing is sort of very different from your book writing too, right?
It is sort of. I started, I guess I've been doing it for like 11 years now. And I initially moved to LA to pursue acting. So I've always been, in sort of the arts entertainment and then shifted into writing and was really more on the comedy side of things. Like I was doing sketch at Second City and improv at UCB. And then I got a job on kind of like a family comedy show and loved it, and then moved to another family show that was more like mystery magic, sort of Harry Potter vibes. And I then moved to like a multicam comedy. So I was very on the comedy, sort of family comedy side of things. But the irony was like every meeting I went into with TV executives, we would, these comedy executives, we would bond over the like obscure crime thrillers from Iceland that we're watching on Netflix. And
Amazing.
that paired with I had for a long time always wanted to write a novel, and I just realized I needed some kind of like structure around making that happen or sort of like understanding the process. And I also just love school. Like I'm a huge nerd and have always loved school. So anytime I have a chance to be in some kind of class, sign me up. So while I was staffed on a TV show, I applied for and got into the Stanford novel writing program. So I did that for 2 years. And the funny thing about that is, it's Stanford, and so, like, a lot of my classmates were writing, like, the next great American novel, like, the next Grapes of Wrath, and I was like, "I wanna write the next Gone Girl," Like,
Like
I'm
it.
really into like, mystery and thriller, and I think that kind of helped me embrace what I really love, and the books I read as a kid growing up, like, I've always, always been into thriller, even like some fantasy. And I wasn't doing that in my TV work at all. And I think this sort of acted as a bridge where I was like, you know what? I think I should try my hand at like drama and kind of shift gears here. And then that I sold my first pilot, which was a drama pilot to ABC. And we were in New York 3 days from cameras rolling when COVID hit. So I know. So I came back to LA, and since then, I've been really fortunate enough to just work in development, selling pilots, and all of them have been crime, serial killer shows, thrillers, mysteries, little horror thrown in there. So yeah, I've really kind of switched gears, but I don't know. I sort of think most writers most writers can probably write most genres. You know what I mean? It's like if you can tell a story, then you can tell a story, period, is what I think about it. So I sometimes think putting people in these boxes can be a little frustrating.
Yeah.
I love how casually you just talk about how fucking cool you are. Yeah.
No.
It's like, "Okay, yeah," like, not our world at all. It's very
Yeah,
cool,
just
just, like,
doing some acting, just was with, the most famous
just
improv group
writing
in
these great
history, and
books, just yeah, like, just set up pilots, like, look at like, what would we do without brains like yours? It's so
yes,
cool.
that's awesome.
You are very kind, and please rest assured that I do not feel cool at all.
Do you get him?
Do I get oh my gosh, yeah, like
Really?
yeah, I mean,
She's like,
I
"What are
think
you doing?" Like, "Of course I do."
I know,
You
I'm
think
like,
it's so simple,
doesn't
you just
everybody?
I don't guess. I guess from the outside looking in, you think like,
Yeah.
"This person really has their shit together." They never get that.
Yeah, I mean, I think well, also it's like, the sound bites of like, "Here's how put together my life is," but then, I also have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I'm, like, just surviving the days, you know?
Yeah,
Oh,
for
Um,
yeah.
sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Are you in the, like, "Watch this, mom. Watch this. Look at this." Or the why?
Yeah.
everything. I mean, every
Yeah.
5 seconds is like, "Mama, I want a snack. Mama, I want water. Mama, do that." There's this funny meme that I was like, this is it. This is it." It's like a kid sitting at the table, and he's, like, pointing to the ground at a crayon that has fallen, and he's like, "Mama," right? Like, "Get the crayon," on the floor.
Mhm.
And then the next little cell is the same child has stacked, like, chairs and boxes all on top of each other to get, like, 20 feet up to a knife that's, like, hidden on top of a cabinet, and it's
Well,
like, that is so accurate. Like, I can't get off my chair and get this thing that's right at my feet, but I will go out of my way to get something dangerous that I'm not supposed to have.
the heck?
That
I'm not
is
excited.
so funny, I love that. Going back to what you were saying kind of about genre and, if you can write a story, you can write a story. I find it interesting. I think that comedy and horror or whatever you wanna call dark, fiction, I feel like they're so much closer to each other than, like, people would maybe think because, like, I think like, they're the ones that elicit, like, that really strong emotional response, whether it is a laugh or, a scream kinda thing. So I find that a lot
Yes.
of horror writers, 1 are funny, but 2 also, like, have worked in that because Brian McCauley
Yeah.
obviously, wrote for a family comedy before he started writing all these slasher books too, so that's really interesting.
Yes, it's so true, and I never thought about that really until recently when someone was saying the same thing to me, and it's like, "Oh my god, that's so true," because it's really you're building up tension, whether it be tension to finally release as a laugh or tension to release as a scream, but, like, you have to build the audience to get to that point. Even the simple, like, 3-beat structure, right? Like, for a joke, it's kind of the same thing with fear, like, if you're gonna build it up, you gotta get the beats in. So, yeah, I do find that fascinating. I had never thought of that before, but kinda makes sense. Like, even Daniel Kraus, like, now I'm thinking of a bunch of horror writers that often have a lot of comedy in their stuff too.
Yeah, yeah, Grady Hendrix, I would think, like,
Yeah.
definitely a
Oh,
lot.
yeah, yeah. Yep.
But, I'm hoping to be one day
Yeah.
that writes,
Yeah?
Yeah,
horror comedy. The problem is I just wanna keep reading all the time. This wanting to read so much is interrupting my desire to write. How do you
That's
balance
funny. I
that?
get
Because
that.
I see, like, so many authors on here, it's like, a lot of them I'm surprised how many books they can read, but also writing so much, so is that difficult for you?
and having 2 kids.
Tonight's
I
bedtime story
know.
is gonna be the last 5 pages of Mommy's book.
Yeah. Let's workshop mommy's horror book. I totally know what you're saying. The funny thing is, if I'm really in a rut with writing and it's, like, not coming easily and I feel stuck, one of my favorite things to do is just go read, a great book, like a new I'm not a rereader. I know a lot of people love to, like, reread their fa I can't do that. I feel like I'm wasting time, which is maybe terrible, but,
Nope,
I go read
I'm the exact same way. I'm like, it will live in my
Yeah.
heart for what the first time I read
Mhm.
it. I
Yes,
should say the
exactly.
only book I've ever reread is, Bridge to Terabithia, and I would do it, like, for every school project.
Why would you do that to yourself?
Well, apparently I was a horror reader then, I know that I like to read about horrific shit.
Jeez. To just touch your heart over and
I
over.
know, and I see it's
Yes.
available at, when Libby and I'm like, "Should I do it? Should I do it? Should I read it from the
My
adult?"
gosh, Rebecca. No.
I know,
You're
Just
like,
God.
pop where the red fern grows and,
Yeah, I
Old
know.
Yeller at it while you're at it.
Look, I
oh
know,
my gosh.
exactly. What if we
But
had,
I
like, a
mean, I
book
do
club
find
like
that
that, of one that
if
just would make you fucking sob,
A g
like, as
sobbing book.
adults, like, to tap into your inner child? That sounds brutal.
Yeah, I'm good.
And this book club is being recorded with video.
I mean, January
yeah.
2026 book club pretty much.
What?
January 2026 is pretty much that book
It
club,
is,
so,
pretty much.
like, thank
Isn't that
goodness
true?
let's end this month.
My gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
But,
Just turn on the
no,
news.
that's so funny.
Way to take it from something funny to, like, "And let
And
me ground
crushing
you
salt.
in
Well,
look, it is the
listen,
reality, okay?
yes,
But I'm trying to
we're
escape
all
for
just trying to,
look,
trying to
there
get
was some really awful news that came out
Yes,
today.
Catherine O'Hara, like, I can't even handle this.
Yeah, uh,
Wait, why? I
no.
didn't see it.
I'm so sorry to
Yeah.
tell you.
Oh,
Wait, wow,
yeah.
Adam, you are the
Sorry.
master to it's not funny. But
No.
no, the mom from
Yeah, Catherine O'Hara passed today,
Yes.
so,
Schitt's Creek and Home
yeah.
Alone and
Oh
Beetlejuice.
my
So
god.
the one bar next to not next to us, but in town, is actually saying, like, "We are so upset as a staff," and so they're running drink specials all weekend, and I'm
For
not like
her, yeah.
well, yeah, and it's, like, all, like, themed, like, there's the
Mhm.
Kevin!
Yeah.
And, like, everything for different movies, and I know we don't normally go out and do that, but I was thinking maybe we should.
Yeah.
There's, like, certain celebrity deaths that
Mhm. Really hurt.
that,
Yeah,
just hearing how
they
she
hit
like,
different.
made these characters and workshopped them, like, the talent and the art.
Mhm.
Like, give Jackie a minute, she might
Yes.
be crying after you
Yeah.
just dropped that
Sorry.
bomb.
I kn no, I had no idea, but there are you're right that, like, some actor deaths just hit like, I remember when Philip Seymour Hoffman died, that was a really hard one for me,
God,
you know? Heath Ledger is another one. It's like, I don't know,
Oh,
that was
some of them just
I know. Adam felt that way about Bob Saget.
what?
yes.
I mean, when you talk about, like, someone being part of your childhood, though, like, that's
I know you
definitely
did, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
yeah, so that it
No,
is
but it was
painful.
shocking
Yeah.
because 'cause you're like, "They were fine. Well, how were they?"
Yeah.
Oh, and also Chadwick Boseman.
Oh, it's awful, yeah.
And I also I'm
Yes,
sorry, I
yes.
loved, the chef, Food Network lady,
Oh,
Anne
Amber
Burrell.
yeah.
That one fucked me up. I learned to cook after her, man,
Yeah.
like, I really did.
Yep. No, I hear you. Definitely.
Let's
Okay.
switch topics now.
So, depression moment's over. Let's,
Oh my god, but no, I mean, these books, like, I remember, Adam, the first time you ever introduced me to her books because I didn't think I was a horror reader, and, okay, I knew I wasn't a horror reader, okay, I was deep set in that, and I was still doing my evangelical recovery, deconstruct and,
My gosh.
you and I were talking, and it was just kinda like one of these marriage conversations of like, okay, we've been married for a long time and
mhm,
you're always trying to do things to like stay in love and incorporate with your spouse and he was I'm reading but I'm not reading the books he is and I said like why
Mhm.
don't you go ahead and like pick me like 8 to 9 books that you would really want me to read for
mhm.
like the month of October and your book was one of the books on the stack.
Dearest, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Aw.
it was. And you're like, "But you might have some difficulty with this one just because it's
Difficult mothers are, personal.
like."
Yeah. Yeah.
But, so yeah, I mean, I know you've loved her writing for a long time,
Mhm,
and now I know that I was again, as I already shared about Bridge to Terabithia, I'm just a certain genre type of, horrific reader, but I really will read almost anything now, and I feel like after Adam tricked me into reading Incidents by Around the
incidents
House,
around the house, yeah.
telling me that this was not a possession story, it's completely safe to read.
I didn't
And then
yeah,
I was, like, over halfway in, and I'm like, what the fuck's wrong with you? It says possession right here."
they're doing an exorcism. What about that part?
Yeah. Anyway, then I was like, "Okay, well, I hate your guts," and at the same time, this was a
Mhm.
fantastic book, and, it got me over the hump of now I feel like I can read anything.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
then long run, I thank you. So, I will
I
so I
mean, I I've had a s that's so I mean, that means so much to me that Dearest was on that stack. Thank you. I had a somewhat similar experience, like, I never was a big horror reader. I never considered myself I'm not a horror aficionado, and I think I assumed horror was like what most people who have not, ventured into the genre, especially in literature, I think they
Mhm.
assume it's like 90s slasher,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
slasher books. And it was like 2021 or something, I think, and I had had a baby in, less than a year prior, and someone recommended The Only Good Indians by Stephen
Oh,
Graham Jones.
yes.
And I went for it. I was like, I mean, I'm not a horror person, but sure, I'll read it. And I mean, that book like kind of changed my life because I got to the end and I was sobbing and I was like, I didn't know horror could do this, And now I realize like that's that's really what horror is. It's like this way to process. I mean, this book for me for The Only Good Indians for me was like such a deep sort of meditation on motherhood, even though it's like I don't know if you guys have read I assume Adam
Yes.
has read it, but
Absolutely, yes.
I did
okay.
not read it, but I can tell you, I not to interrupt you, but I can tell you that the reaction you had to this book, I think Adam had very similar. Like, I can
Mhm.
remember where we were at, what your
Oh,
reactions
yeah.
were, how you were reading this stuff. Like, I've never read anything like this
Yeah.
before.
No, it definitely changed my whole perspective on horror writing too, and just maybe books in general. I'm like, "Wait, books can do this?" So but go
Yes.
ahead.
Yes, exactly. I just was like, I didn't know horror was even trying to do this much, And then I was fascinated and was, like, reading as much as I could, and I was getting on Reddit threads and seeing, how kind of beautiful the community is because I think we have this picture in our head of what horror readers are like, and then you
Yes.
go and you read these posts and people are like, "Hey guys, I recently lost my dad and I'm trying to process it. Like, do you have a book for me?" And people will recommend and I'm like, "Oh, I get it now." Like this is so much more than what people assume it is. And horror just gives you this beautiful like it's a beautiful tool, for healing
Yeah.
and processing. And yeah, so that book I had a similar experience where I was like, "Oh," and then I was like, "I want to write this kind of because I can like with Dearest, writing a book about postpartum psychosis, I don't know how many people are gonna pick it up, but if you're like, this is a really fucking I hopefully I can say that, cool,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I said fuck like
ghost
3 times already. It's your turn. It's your turn.
but you're like, "This is a ghost story," and if that's all you get from it, that's okay, but most readers are also gonna take away, "Oh, there's some insight here about something that I've never really understood before, and I have a new empathy for this, people that go through this," and, like, that's such a powerful thing.
Yes. Well, postpartum anything is very lonely, I think. And
Yes, yes.
the people that pretend that it's like, "Oh, I've just rebounded and I feel great." It's like, I think you're lying or maybe not having the majority of experience. I had postpartum with both of my children, and it showed up differently in different ways. I just think I mean, when they talk about the things that a human body goes through in order to just doctor I had that, like, extreme morning sickness and had to get, like, the bags of IVs and all that kinda stuff, and he was like,
Yes. Oh, I'm
"It's
sorry, yeah.
okay if you're not eating because these your baby's like a little parasite. It'll take everything it needs from you," and I was like, "Cool, endearing."
Can it leave anything for
Yeah,
you?
no, it didn't, and they steal your hair and all that sort of stuff,
Oh,
and
yes, yeah.
but you can see that, like, your body has to go through so much of a recovery period, not only, like, your mind and then, your whether you're breast or bottle feeding, the feeding and, like, cluster feeding and just and then as you bring in more children with different the dynamic I mean, it's just I mean, I think there's a lot of beautiful moments, but also, like, you are in major hormone fluctuation,
Mhm.
um yeah, bleeding, recover,
Yes,
all that
yes.
kinda stuff, so I think that it's a great subject for it, and it in and of itself is really, I mean, horrific. I remember the night, like, before my first child, I was like, "I can't have a C-section because she was breech," and I was like, "And I also can't deliver this baby, but I have to have this child out,
Yeah.
but I cannot do it no matter which way." It's like, but I don't
Oh,
want either way, but it's gotta come out, and it's just I mean, really, when you think about the human female body that can produce this and pushing it out, I mean, it's absolutely just I think we take for granted how horrific that is because it's so normalized right now.
yes, and I mean, even just the simple fact of, like, how it takes, 10 months for your uterus to grow to the size it needs, and then it shrinks back down to the size of a walnut in, like, 3 days. Like, the
Yeah.
hormone crash is just,
Uh-huh.
Wild.
like,
Dump. I
you
did
know
not know the stats on that.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
I go into a
So
quick, like, aside here real quick of, and
yeah.
it's my turn to do the depressing thing now, but, so I was told that a coworker of mine lives in the Georgia area, and they were there because their, spouse had a migraine, and they said a woman walked in screaming, wailing, doubled, tripled over in pain, and was, like, clearly in the middle of, like, halfway between having a miscarriage and not, and they
Mm.
said, like he said they just sat them down and just said, like, basically, he's like, "I was in" he's like, "My wife's a nurse," and he's like, "It was like the fucking deli counter of just take a number." Like, they didn't do anything
Oh,
for her, and he said the only one that was compassion was the, security guard,
mm.
and I was like, "Was this a person of color?" And he was like, "No, but I think the reason they didn't touch it is because we're a red state, and they didn't wanna be involved in any way of what was happening."
Assisting with
Yeah,
the
and
yeah.
so they finally got they said, like, it was so, like, for them, they said, like, once they got home, they were just, like, frazzled with
Mm.
watching the inhumanity of what happened, and they said that she ended up leaving, like, to go try to find another hospital that
Oh,
would help
wow.
her, and I'm like, "So"
What?
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
I just like
doesn't
he was
that
like,
go
"I don't know if
against, like,
another
the very
hospital's even
oath?
gonna take them," and, obviously, the Atlanta traffic is so congested and whatnot, but, I mean, it was a matter of, like, I just remember that woman that was, like, shown on video that was in trying to just, deliver, and they were just like, "Let me get your name and information." He's like, the way they just talked to her as if, like he's like, "And, I know if I walked in and I'm a man and I'm like, if I'm having a heart attack, like, my heart hurts,
They're gonna
my left
they'll
arm
take
hurts,
you
whatever,
back
they're gonna
immediately.
take him back immediately," and it was intentional. It was horrific.
Yeah. Yeah. That is I cannot imagine because there's a whole emotional component to what she was going through on top of it, you know? It's not just a physical thing. So to be, like, shunned that way, I just yeah, I can't imagine. I cannot imagine.
When we edit this, you need to put trigger warning
Yeah.
probably,
Yeah, we'll put that
sorry.
on, yeah. Well, it's interesting because, you know what, not to, like, take a hard right turn here, but, when it comes to turn off the light, there's a lot of, like, generational trauma working through sort of, like, estranged siblings, but also sort of the thing that, people at least around my age now are dealing with is that at some point you are going to lose your parents, right? If you have not.
Mhm.
And like that sort of it's not always sudden and it's like the sort of the slow moving tragedy that's happening or like the sudden like you see them declining and it kind of takes on different aspects in this book, but that's ultimately like where the characters are beginning is that sort of like, okay, this is happening, to their parent who they've had a difficult relationship with too. So it's again like you're taking these issues that I think a lot of people are going to relate to and, making it that sort of backdrop to the really cool like horror things that are happening, but there's such emotional truth to it as well. Um and just kind of want the backdrop of I know that it was originally, like you said, kind of just that present story that was being told,
Mhm.
and sort of what aspects of that you really wanted to kinda dive into.
Yeah, it's really interesting because, the obviously, the dad character, he has, dementia in the book, and, he's at the end of his life, and that's obviously a huge part of the novel. It's, the inciting incident that brings her home and all of that. Um, but I don't think I ever thought of it as so I did go into this book initially, like, seeing generational trauma as one of the things I wanted to kind of tackle. Like, if postpartum psychosis was Dearest, then, a big part of this one was generational trauma. And so the dementia, story was born from that, but I think that was part of the book so early on that my writer brain convinced myself that the other parts were sort of the more central parts, the more important parts. And what's been so interesting is to see how many readers have connected with the dad story. I've gotten so many DMs from people saying, either I'm going through this right now with my parent or grandparent or like I just recently lost my parent and this has like really helped me process what I went through. It's made me feel less alone and sort of the guilt I had around, there's this it's sort of like you feel like they've already passed before they've passed because 'cause they're not really them anymore, that it's complicated and messy, and I really did not like, I would not have predicted that that many people would connect with that part of the story. It's been, like, a really special, cool thing to see now that it's getting to readers.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the way your main character too, like this idea that they came back, to care and those kind of things, and to feel like you're making it worse, because like that's how kind
Yeah.
of a father reacts. Like it adds a layer of this just like this pain of like you're not even really getting to say goodbye in the way that you want to also. And I thought that was a really interesting dynamic for this character that ultimately kind of didn't want to be there in the first place, right?
Right. Yes.
So I love that. I also wanted to talk about your setting because we're in South Central Pennsylvania, like that whole sort of like eastern shore of Virginia, Maryland, um, is a place that we go to often. So it was really cool, like, having the story set there. How like near
That
and
is
dear to
cool.
your heart is that spot to you too? Because it seems like you definitely know it very well.
Yeah, I grew up in Virginia Beach,
Perfect. Yeah.
right across the bridge tunnel. So, I
Such a good
haven't spent a
aquarium
ton
there.
of time. It's what?
I said it's such a good aquarium there.
Yeah, they do have a great aquarium.
I'm so
Yes.
serious. When I think of Virginia Beach, I'm like, like,
Yeah,
they have the turtles, like, you can just sit in front of the, like,
sea
3-foot
turtles.
forest.
Yeah, we have videos.
Yeah, Virginia Beach is great. It was a great place to grow up. So, I didn't spend a ton of time on the Eastern Shore, but I've definitely been there many times, and my mom still lives in Virginia Beach, and she frequents it a lot. I just find it to be such an interesting place. It feels like a time capsule almost, and
Yeah,
I feel like, most of the country, honestly, probably doesn't even know it exists. So, I thought it was an interesting place because it feels isolated. It was also, for the 1600s, it's one of the first Jamestown and all of that, and then when they went over to the Eastern Shore, it's even more isolated because, at that point, they didn't have the bridge. So,
right.
I just thought it was an interesting setting for both timelines, and I did fictionalize, the city, the technical town that they're in is fictional, mostly because I feel like unless you know a place like the back of your hand, it's intimidating to write it because people are
Yeah.
like, "That restaurant doesn't
Oh,
serve
yeah.
eggs Benedict," you know? So it's like, okay, I need to fictionalize, but for the most part, I was just trying to capture the spirit of it and sort of the ghostliness of it, and, I mean, in many ways, it feels like a ghost town. There's the very touristic parts, but once you get out of that, it's kind of, it's a lot of abandoned buildings, and so it sort of has this eeriness kind of inherent in its landscape.
Absolutely, and we would for a few years, we would go down to, like, Chincoteague Island, and it's so true, like, on that island, it's touristy, but you're 5, 10 minutes away, and you're in the middle of nowhere, and
It's wrong turn.
it
It's
is
absolutely
yeah,
wrong
like,
turn.
you're like, "Are you sure this
Texas
isn't
Chainsaw Massacre.
you sure this isn't West
Yeah.
Virginia?" In some of it, and
Yes.
so but at the same time, you're 2 hours away from the nation's capital, right? Like, it's so weird.
Right.
Um,
Right. Yes.
he had, like, a first-year anniversary trip there,
Mhm.
and stayed in, like, a very nice, like, Airbnb, like, Ryan Homes community, and when I tell you I had to close every blind and lock every door, and I
Oh,
was
yeah.
deeply uncomfortable. I'm like, "Where are all the people? Why is it so
Yes.
empty?" It was like,
And everything closing at, like, 7 p.m. every day,
"Ugh,
where it's
Yes.
like, if you haven't gotten dinner
Yes.
by, like, 7, like,
you
too
are
bad.
fucked."
It's like, maybe
That
if
was
you
in
find a McDonald's,
that
like
was
yeah.
also in, Pleasant
Oh, in South
it's
Carolina,
not
like, when you get to the South
in by
too, like
Charleston.
well, Virginia is the South, but,
I know.
sometimes I don't think
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
you know but, that's really no, you definitely capture that sort of, like, isolation very well, which is
I don't know
very
why
cool,
that
yeah.
really gets to me, like,
Yeah.
it really gets to me.
There's a darkness that you
'Cause
don't get anywhere else, like
your mind, like, starts
Yes.
thinking of this stupid shit that
oh,
you don't
yes.
normally doesn't come out. Do you remember, like, for years when I would be home, I would, like, would lock the bedroom door if I were gonna take a nap, and I
If
wasn't
you were alone,
yeah, it
yeah.
was like in, like, a perfectly normal, like, nothing's ever happened, but I would be like, of course, and I even as a kid, I go downstairs at night if I was, like, thirsty or something, and I would be like, and Jason's gonna be at
Yeah,
my door
what he does.
looking through the pane because my mom didn't have, like, curtains over it or anything, and I mean, it's just the way your mind wanders when you're have the ability to be isolated, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes. So that's why I think a lot of people think like horror books are even scarier than horror movies because like what we can do in our minds is often much more frightening than no.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yes.
Think that's true.
Yeah. So one thing that also really interests me is that you recorded your own audiobook that you
Yes.
narrated. And, one thing saying that you're an actor, also like that makes sense, but what is it like to read your own book? Are you like, "Hell yeah, I wrote that."
Yeah.
Or, it's like,
She
are
probably
you
isn't
like
aware of how cool based upon our earlier
yeah,
conversation, she's probably
exactly.
like, "It was no big deal."
Yeah, like what's that like? Because sometimes I feel, I teach and I tell my students to read out loud because the things you notice when you hear those words out loud are so different than when you're, reading in your head. So, like, what is that experience like?
Yes. Well, I definitely read everything that I write out loud, even if I'm not going to do the audiobook because,
Mhm.
and this may be because I come from TV and stuff, but I have to hear it out loud because I also think rhythm is so important, and eh, like whether you're listening to it or reading it on the page, there's a rhythm to the words. So I have to hear them out loud for sure. Uh, and doing the audiobook it was cool because I really was able to switch gears. I was able to turn off my writer brain. There's no changing the words now. This is not about judging what I've written. This is simply about performing the words that are on the page. And it was really fun. I kind of got to experience the book in a totally different way, almost as a reader would, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was really fun. It's also like, oh my god, a power to audiobook readers. It's I just also just recorded Turn Off the Light, and it's is exhausting because you're, like, in this booth and you can't move really. Like, the mic picks up every little thing, if your stomach grumbles, you have to go back and do it again. And so you're, like, reading off of an iPad, and it's, like it's kind of grueling work in a weird way. Like, I would come out of the studio, and my brain is like mush. But it's really fun, and I don't really get to perform anymore, so it kinda scratches that itch for me as well. But Turn Off the Light, I have to do a bunch of accents, and so I'm very prepared for people to be like, "The accents were distracting." You know what I mean?
I think as
So
an
we'll
audio
see.
reader, you need to have that because sometimes it's very
Differentiating.
Yeah. Yeah.
don't
We'll
give
see.
yourself a
I
hard
mean
time.
I
See,
love it.
she's already imposter syndrome herself now. No, it's
exactly.
I think that's really good and creative and like I said, really helps you to distinguish the characters, so I never really thought about how grueling of work that would be though.
Yeah, how many days do you get to record something like,
So I'm like a crazy person and like to power through things. But in theory, so like Dearest, we had 5 days. I did it in three. And kind of similarly with Turn Off the Light, like I recorded all of the present day chapters before the holidays. And then I did all the 1600s chapters after the holidays.
So smart to like break up the timeline so you can like accurately stay in character or space.
Yeah, yeah, I thought that would be easier, and also, like, even just scheduling wise, we had to I mean, I would have broken it up that way even if we did all the days consecutively, but knowing that we couldn't do all the days consecutively because of the studio schedule and everything, I just was like, "Okay, let's get the present day out of the way, and then I have a little extra time to just go through the dialects," The thing is with 1600s, the truth is we don't know what they sounded like. like, there's obviously no recordings or anything. We don't know, and it was probably mostly British, but there were also influences from other, European countries, and so, like, we don't really know what it sounded like. So I did a sort of, like, London Cockney mix kinda thing, but it was so fun, like, I just haven't gotten to do that kind of acting in so long, so it was like yeah, it was just really fun.
That's cool. Saw the little stories and stuff of you going in to do it, and I thought that's just gotta be a cool moment to read your own book for an audiobook, so that's very I love that. I also wanted to ask
Yeah.
about because it's really cool, I love seeing you talk about also is, Send Me a Book.
Yes,
Can you
so
tell our
that
listeners
has
what that's all about? Yeah.
yes. So Send Me a Book it's on Instagram and it's also my, like, weekly newsletter, and it's a way for readers to get authentic book recommendations from authors. So authors recommend a book they love, and then I give away a copy of that book to someone. So it's been really great. It's like the community is awesome, and, I've only done it for, like, I don't know, 7 months or something, and we have, like, almost 7,000 subscribers. So, yeah, so it's growing really well, and the newsletter has kind of expanded to include other things, like I have an Ask Me Anything section and just sort of the status of, like, things I've watched because I watch a ton of TV, obviously, that being my job, so
Yeah.
like TV recommendations. And so it's been really fun, and I don't totally know where it's going, but I think that's okay. It's mostly to build a community, and we'll see what the next step is. But yeah, send me a book on Instagram. Would love to see anyone there.
Very cool, and Turn Off the Light, March 3rd, right?
Yes, sir.
And do you have anything book-wise that you're working on now that you can hint at?
I have to start writing it, but it's basically plotted out in my head. So I think we're in a good, for me, like what takes the longest is figuring out what it is. The actual writing is pretty fast. So I think I'm pretty much at the point where I'm ready to start writing. This next one it's funny because I think Dearest was mostly horror thriller, psychological thriller. Turn Off the Light feels to me more mystery with horror elements. This next one is definitely mostly thriller, so
Okay.
I don't even know what we'll end up marketing it as, but, yeah, I probably shouldn't say much else since I literally have lots of twists and turns and stuff, all the good
Yes.
stuff.
Keep them on their toes, I love that. So where can we find you on all the socials, and any last, like, words about who Turn Off the Light is for? We love to say kind of like, if your book was the medicine, who are you prescribing it to?
I mean, I can say we've got dual narratives, so if you like dual timeline, if you like historical fiction, I also say that somewhat reticently because I know some people are like, "I do not like historical fiction." So, and I wouldn't consider myself a historical fiction writer, so, but it has that element. Spooky, but with heart. I think if you're a horror reader that likes your horror with heart and elements of real human elements of grief and motherhood and all of, like estranged family relationships, all of that stuff, then this is definitely your book. I am on Instagram as J Walters Writes. And if you do pre-order Turn Off the Light, I'm about to announce it this weekend, but I have a bunch of free goodies and things that I will be sending anyone who, pre-orders the book, and also will give probably like 20 people a chance to win Dearest as well. So definitely check out yeah, check out my Instagram for all of that information.
Awesome, love that. Well, you are absolutely 2 for 2 for me, and we will follow whatever you have coming next. I will be waiting with bated breath to read. So, thank you so much for joining us, and
Thank you,
really
Adam.
appreciate you.
Thank you,
Thank
Jackie.
you guys. Yes, it was
Yep,
so lovely. Have a great
good.
weekend.
Yes, you too.
You.
Okay, bye.